Under the bed, right now, Dad. My 8-year-old daughter, Chloe, didn't whisper it like a child playing a game. She said it with a terrifying, cold precision that instantly made my blood run cold. She didn't wait for my response. She grabbed my wrist, her tiny fingers digging into my skin with surprising force, and pulled me down toward the linoleum floor of the private maternity suite. My name is Marcus Vance. For 10 years, I worked as a senior risk analyst for international logistics firms, a job that taught me to spot anomalies before they turned into catastrophes. But nothing in my professional life had prepared me for the sight of my daughter's pale, sweat-streaked face as she forced me into the narrow, dark gap beneath the hospital bed. My newborn son Leo was sleeping in the bassinet just 3 feet away. My wife Eleanor had supposedly been taken down the hall for a routine post-delivery checkup 20 minutes earlier. The heavy oak door of the suite clicked open. Through the narrow gap beneath the hanging bed skirt, I saw 3 pairs of shoes enter the room. First were the polished, bespoke Italian leather loafers belonging to Charles Sterling, my multi-millionaire father-in-law. Next were the red designer pumps worn by Eleanor. My chest tightened. She wasn't supposed to be walking yet. Her scheduled spinal block was meant to keep her bedridden for at least 6 hours. The third pair of shoes was a sterile set of white hospital clogs. "Is the security feed offline?" Charles's voice was calm, devoid of any paternal warmth. It was the same tone he used when terminating supply chain contracts. "The server room has a scheduled maintenance window starting right now," the man in the white clogs replied. His voice was deep, professional, and entirely detached. "We have exactly 12 minutes before the backup systems cycle back online. The nursery staff won't log the discrepancy until the shift change at 7 in the morning." "And the biological father?" Eleanor asked. Hearing her refer to me that way, as a biological variable rather than her husband of 9 years, felt like a physical blow to my ribs. "Marcus is currently looking for a coffee in the lobby," Charles said, his voice dripping with condescension. I had my driver redirect him to the West Pavilion under the pretense of retrieving Eleanor's overnight bag. He is a predictable man. He will be occupied for at least another 10 minutes. "He doesn't suspect anything?" the doctor asked. "Marcus thinks he's part of the family," Eleanor scoffed, her voice flat and cold. "He actually believes we're taking this child back to our lake estate. He has no idea the trust fund paperwork he signed last month contains a sole custody waiver in the event of my death or permanent medical incapacitation. And once the baby is declared deceased from sudden infant respiratory distress tonight, the $55 million Sterling Foundation asset liquidates directly into my offshore account." "And the surrogate's child?" Charles asked. "Already prepped in room 412, the doctor replied. "The swap will take place in 90 seconds. The dead infant will be placed in this bassinet. By the time Marcus returns, the medical staff will already be performing artificial resuscitation. There will be no autopsy. The coroner is on our payroll." Chloe's hand pressed hard against my mouth. Her palm was damp, her tiny body trembling violently against mine. I held her tight against my chest, my mind operating at a speed I hadn't accessed since my days coordinating emergency extractions in high-risk zones. If I stood up now, if I confronted them in this room, I had zero leverage. Charles Sterling owned this hospital. The security guard at the door was paid by Sterling Industries. If I made a scene, I would be sedated, framed, or quietly removed, and my daughter and son would be left completely at their mercy. I needed to let them think they were winning. The white clogs stepped toward the bassinet. I heard the faint, metallic rustle of a plastic identification band being snipped. "We are moving," the doctor whispered. "Keep Marcus away from the north corridor." The 3 pairs of shoes retreated, the heavy door clicking shut behind them. I slid out from beneath the bed, my muscles coiled like springs. Chloe scrambled out right behind me, her eyes wide with terror, but her lips pressed in a tight, silent line. I had raised her to be resilient, but this was a nightmare no 8-year-old should ever have to comprehend. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They're going to kill Leo." "They aren't going to do anything to him," I said, my voice low, steady, and commanding. I needed to be the anchor she could hold on to. "Listen to me, Chloe. I need you to do exactly what I say. No questions, no hesitation. Do you trust me?" She nodded quickly, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I need you to go to the visitor lounge on the 3rd floor. Find Mrs. Gable. Tell her your stomach hurts and you want to sit with her. Do not mention Eleanor. Do not mention your grandfather. Do not look scared. Can you do that?" "But what about you?" "I'm getting your brother," I said. I checked the hallway through the small glass pane in the heavy wood door. It was empty. The dim, sterile lights of the private wing hummed with a quiet indifference. I kissed the top of Chloe's head, nudged her toward the south exit elevator, and turned toward the north corridor. I didn't have 12 minutes. I had maybe 5. I bypassed the main nurse's station, keeping my shoulder low and my pace deliberate. I wasn't running. Running attracted attention. I wore a dark charcoal sweater and dark jeans, standard civilian attire that blended into the background of a high-end private hospital. Room 412 was at the end of the restricted wing. I reached the door and turned the handle. Locked. I didn't waste time looking for a keycard. I stepped back, jammed my shoulder against the frame, and felt for the latch. These were electronic locks, which meant they relied on a continuous current to keep the magnetic plate engaged. If the server room was undergoing a hard reset, the fail-secure mechanism should have a microsecond delay. I pulled my pocket knife from my pocket, the small titanium-handled utility tool I always carried, and jammed the flat edge of the blade into the strike plate, applying steady, upward leverage. The magnetic latch clicked and popped open. The room inside was dark, illuminated only by the green glow of a heart monitor. In the center of the room sat a single bassinet. A tiny baby boy, wrapped in a blue hospital blanket, was sleeping peacefully. I checked his ankle. The plastic band read, Vance, M., born 10:42 a.m. It was my son. Beside him lay another infant, completely still, its skin already pale and cool. My stomach turned. They had already brought the deceased child from the morgue or another facility to stage the tragedy. I picked up Leo. He was incredibly light, his tiny chest warm against my palm. I tucked him securely inside my charcoal sweater, zip-up style, creating a makeshift sling that kept him flush against my chest. "Marcus." The voice came from the doorway. I spun around. Dr. Joseph Kensington, the chief of obstetrics, stood there holding a small silver tray with a pre-filled syringe. His eyes went from me to the empty bassinet, then to the slight bulge beneath my sweater. "You shouldn't be in here, Marcus," Kensington said, his voice smooth but strained. "Your wife is looking for you." "The server room maintenance was a nice touch, Joseph," I said, stepping forward. I didn't back down. I made sure my posture was dominant, my eyes locked onto his. "How much is Charles paying you to certify a infant death? 500,000? $1 million? Kensington's hand trembled slightly on the tray. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're exhausted. Let's go back to your room and talk about this. If you touch that call button, I will break your collarbone before the signal reaches the desk," I said, my voice dropping to a register that made him freeze. "You're a doctor, Joseph. You know exactly how much force it takes to fracture a clavicle. Now, give me your access badge." "Marcus, please." I didn't wait. I stepped into his space, grabbed his right wrist, twisted it down, and snatched the white security badge clipped to his lapel. I shoved him backward into the empty rolling chair. "If I see security before I reach the exit, the federal board gets the documentation of your offshore accounts that I've been tracking for the last 3 months." I lied. A good bluff needs to be specific. Kensington's face drained of color. He knew he had skeletons. A man who helps steal babies always has financial ruin waiting in the wings. I exited the room, locking the door from the outside with his keycard. I didn't take the main elevators. I took the service stairs, moving quickly but quietly, keeping my hand over Leo's head to protect him from the drafts. Every step down the concrete stairwell felt like a descent into an abyss. I had no home to go to. Charles owned our house through a corporate holding company. My bank accounts were linked to Eleanor's family trust. I was entirely on my own. I reached the ground floor exit that led to the delivery docks. The cold night air hit my face like a splash of ice water. It was late autumn in Chicago, the wind howling off the lake, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and impending snow. My truck was parked in the far corner of the gravel lot, away from the security cameras. I unlocked the cab, carefully placed Leo into the rear-facing car seat I had installed just 2 days ago, and buckled him in. My hands were steady now. The adrenaline had cleared, leaving only a cold, hard clarity. I started the engine, kept the headlights off until I cleared the perimeter gate, and drove toward the third-floor visitor lounge exit to retrieve my daughter. As I pulled up to the curb, I saw Chloe sitting on the concrete bench outside the glass doors, her purple backpack clutched in her lap. Mrs. Gable, our elderly neighbor who had driven her to the hospital, was standing beside her, looking confused. I rolled down the window. "Mrs. Gable, thanks for watching her. Eleanor needs some quiet rest, so I'm taking Chloe to get some food. Oh, Marcus, of course, she said, her voice thin in the wind. Is everything all right? Eleanor looked so pale earlier. Everything is fine, I said, forcing a warm, reassuring smile. Just a long day. Chloe didn't say a word. She scrambled into the passenger seat, locked the door behind her, and pulled the seatbelt across her chest. As we pulled out of the hospital parking lot, I looked in the rearview mirror. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows were turning into the main entrance, their high beams cutting through the dark. Charles Sterling's cleanup crew had arrived, but they were too late. We drove in silence for 40 minutes, heading west toward the rural outskirts of Kane County. I didn't use the highway. License plate readers were everywhere, and Charles had access to the state transit database through his political connections. I stuck to the back roads, the 2-lane state routes lined with skeletal cornfields and old wooden barns. Daddy? Chloe's voice was small. I'm here, sweetheart. Are we ever going back to the big house? No, I said. We're going to build a new one. With Mom? I looked at her through the mirror. She was looking out the window at the passing darkness. She already knew the answer. She had heard her mother's voice under that bed. She had heard the indifference. Just you, me, and Leo, I said. We arrived at a small, rusted metal garage off Route 47 just before midnight. The sign on the door read Hanson's Diesel Repair, but the bays had been empty for 5 years. The owner, Thomas Mack McInnes, was a former logistics officer I had pulled out of a legal swamp in Rotterdam a decade ago. He owed me his life, his pension, and his freedom. I tapped the horn twice, paused, then tapped it again. The side door of the garage opened. Mack stepped out, wearing a greasy flannel shirt and holding a heavy steel flashlight. When he saw my truck, he didn't ask questions. He waved me inside and immediately pulled the heavy chain to lower the bay door behind us, cutting off the wind. The interior of the garage smelled of motor oil, kerosene, and old metal. Mac walked over to the driver's side window. He looked at me, then at Chloe, and finally at the tiny bundle in the back seat. You look like hell, Marcus, Mac said, spitting a toothpick onto the concrete floor. I need a clean vehicle, $3,000 in cash, and a place to sleep for 4 hours, I said. Mac didn't blink. The cash is in the safe. The vehicle is a '98 Suburban with registered plates that belong to a dead farm estate in Iowa. It doesn't exist on any digital grid. The apartment upstairs has clean sheets and a working space heater. Move. Thanks, Mac. Don't thank me yet, he said, looking toward the closed bay door. Whoever you're running from, they've already put out a local alert. My police scanner has been buzzing for 20 minutes. They're looking for a silver Dodge Ram with Chicago plates. Kidnapping charge. Kidnapping? I let out a dry, humorless laugh. My own son. They're calling it an active abduction of a medical patient, Max said. They claim you're unstable, postpartum psychosis by proxy, or some other high-class garbage. They've got the state police involved. Charles Sterling has 3 senators on his speed dial, I said, stepping out of the cab and carefully lifting Leo from his car seat. He doesn't want the police to find me. He wants his private security to find me first. If the police get to me, there's a public record. If his people get to me, I disappear into a private psychiatric facility, and the baby goes back to the nursery to die. Mac rubbed his jaw. Then we make sure the police don't find you. Go upstairs, get the girl some food. I'll swap the gear to the Suburban. The apartment above the garage was tiny, cold, and clean. I laid Leo on the worn corduroy sofa, wrapping him in a fresh flannel blanket Mac had left out. Chloe sat on the edge of the couch, watching her brother with a protective intensity that made my heart ache. He's very small, she whispered. He's strong, Chloe, just like you. I sat at the small wooden table, pulled out my satellite phone, the one device I kept off the local cellular grid, and dialed a number I had memorized 5 years ago. Harlan, I said when the line connected. Marcus? The voice on the other end was gravelly, sharp, and instantly alert. Harlan Vance was my uncle, a retired federal prosecutor who spent 30 years putting corrupt corporate executives in maximum security prisons. He lived in a secluded cabin near Duluth, Minnesota. Why are you calling on this line? Eleanor and Charles tried to swap Leo at birth, I said, keeping my voice level. They had a deceased infant ready to take his place. They wanted to trigger the Sterling estate liquidator. $55 million. They were going to frame me for the death, or have me committed. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear the faint scratch of a pen on paper. "Who was the physician?" Harlan asked. "Kensington, chief of obstetrics at St. Jude's." "I know him," Harlan said, his voice dropping into his courtroom register. "He's got 3 active malpractice suits that were quietly settled out of court last year. Charles's holding company funded his private clinic in Geneva. We have jurisdictional leverage if we can prove interstate wire fraud. Did you get the child's real ID band?" "I have it," I said. "And I have Kensington's security badge." "Good. But that's not enough to stop Charles. He'll use the local authorities to crush you before we can get a federal warrant. You need to get out of Illinois. Now." "We're in Kane County," I said. "Mac is prepping a clean vehicle." "Get to Minnesota," Harlan said. "I have a federal magistrate on my fishing roster. We can file an emergency protective custody order under seal. But Marcus, if they stop you before you cross the state line, they will use that kidnapping warrant to take the boy. And once they have him, you'll never see him alive again." "They won't stop me," I said. We left the garage at 3 in the morning. The '98 Suburban was a tank, dark green, rusted around the wheel wells, but the engine hummed with the smooth, heavy power of a newly rebuilt diesel block. Mac had packed the back with 5 extra cans of fuel, a crate of bottled water, baby formula, and $3,400 in non-sequential $20 bills. Chloe was asleep in the middle row, her head resting on her purple backpack. Leo was buckled into his car seat beside her, sleeping through the deep rumble of the exhaust. I drove north on the secondary state highways, avoiding Interstate 90. The snow started falling near Rockford, large, wet flakes that stuck to the windshield and turned the asphalt into a black, slick mirror. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was a private number. I let it ring 3 times before sliding the screen. "Speak." "Marcus." Eleanor's voice was remarkably calm. There was no panic, no anger, just the cold, calculating tone of a woman who had never actually loved me. "You've made a very serious mistake." "I have your son, Eleanor," I said, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. "The real one, not the dead child you had lined up in room 412. "My son is currently in the St. Jude's neonatal unit, recovering from a severe respiratory incident," she said, her voice dropping into a rehearsed, mournful cadence. "The entire country is going to see a desperate, unstable father who couldn't handle the pressure of a newborn. They will see a man who took his daughter and a sick infant into a blizzard. The security servers were offline for 12 minutes, Eleanor. But Dr. Kensington's badge was used to log into room 412 at exactly 10:51. That log is stored on an external cloud server that Charles's local techs can't touch. I have the badge. I have the real ID band." I heard a faint intake of breath on the other end, the first crack in her armor. "You think you can beat my father?" she whispered, her voice losing its calm veneer, replaced by a sharp, venomous edge. "He built this city, Marcus. You're an employee, a risk analyst. You're a clerk we hired to keep our assets neat. You're nothing. Your father built his empire on debt and bribes, Eleanor," I said, my voice dead calm. "And I'm not a clerk. I'm the guy who knows exactly where the foundations are cracked. I'll see you in court." I ended the call and threw the phone out the window into the snow-filled ditch. They could track the signal if I kept it live. I had already downloaded the encrypted log files from Kensington's badge to a secure flash drive tucked into my boot. By 5 in the morning, the snow was 6 inches deep on the state roads. The Suburban cleared the Wisconsin border near Beloit, the heavy 4-wheel drive cutting through the drifts with ease. I stopped at a small, abandoned grain elevator off the road to refuel from the jerry cans in the back. My fingers were stiff with the cold, the wind howling across the flat Wisconsin plains with a relentless, biting fury. I looked at my hands. They were steady. For 9 years, I had lived in the shadow of the Sterling family. I had attended their charity galas, smiled at their dinners, and allowed them to believe I was a passive partner in their gilded world. I had done it because I loved Eleanor, or at least the woman I thought she was. But that man was dead. The man standing in the freezing snow of a Wisconsin farm field was a father who had nothing left to lose. I got back into the cab, checked on Chloe and Leo, both still safe and warm, and headed toward Madison. I knew Charles's people would be watching the main border crossings into Minnesota near La Crosse. They would have spotters at the bridges. So I didn't go west. I went north, toward the deep woods of Eau Claire, planning to cross the Mississippi River at a small, historic toll bridge near Prescott. It was a longer route, but it was empty. At noon, the storm cleared, leaving a blinding white landscape under a pale blue sky. I stopped at a small diner on the outskirts of Black River Falls. The parking lot was filled with plow trucks and old pickups. I left the engine running to keep the heater active for the kids, locked the doors, and walked into the warmth of the diner to buy some warm milk for Leo and a hot meal for Chloe. The television above the counter was tuned to the local news. Active search underway for Marcus Vance, 39, wanted in connection with the abduction of his newborn son from a Chicago hospital, the anchor said. My wedding photo, taken 8 years ago on the steps of the Sterling estate, flashed on the screen. I looked younger, softer, wearing a tuxedo that didn't fit my shoulders. Police warned that Vance may be armed and extremely unstable. Anyone with information is urged to contact. I pulled my baseball cap lower over my eyes. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Marge, slid 2 foam containers of chicken tenders and a carton of milk across the counter. She looked at me, then up at the television screen, and then back at me. I didn't move. I didn't reach for my pocket. I just looked her directly in the eyes. My daughter hasn't eaten since yesterday, I said, my voice low and quiet, and my son needs his formula. Marge looked at the television screen again, where my face was displayed next to the word wanted. She looked at the cash in my hand, a crisp $50 bill. She slid the cash back toward me. Take the food, hun. The milk is on the house. Get those kids where they need to go. Thank you, Marge, I said. Don't stay on the main road, she whispered, leaning over the counter. The State Patrol has a checkpoint 3 miles north on Highway 12. They're stopping every large SUV. I nodded, grabbed the food, and exited the diner. As I walked back to the Suburban, I felt a deep, swelling respect for the quiet decency of ordinary people. Charles Sterling had millions, but he couldn't buy the basic humanity of a woman working the day shift at a highway diner. I bypassed Highway 12, cutting through the county forest roads instead. The snow was unplowed here, the heavy Suburban fishtailing slightly as the tires fought for traction in the deep drifts. I kept my speed steady at 30 miles per hour, my hands light on the wheel, my eyes scanning the tree line for any sign of movement. We reached the Mississippi River crossing at Prescott just before 5 in the afternoon. The sun was setting, casting long purple shadows across the frozen river. The bridge was old, a narrow steel truss structure that creaked in the wind. On the Minnesota side of the bridge, a single state patrol vehicle was parked with its lights off. My heart hammered against my ribs. I couldn't turn back. The road behind me was a dead-end county lane. "Chloe," I said, my voice calm but urgent. "Get down on the floor. Cover Leo." She slipped off the seat immediately, tucking herself into the footwell behind my seat, her arms wrapped around the baby's car seat. I pulled up to the bridge entrance. The state trooper's door opened, and a tall officer in a brown winter coat stepped out, holding a clipboard. He waved his hand for me to stop. I rolled down the window, letting the freezing river wind fill the cab. "Afternoon, officer," I said. The trooper looked at the Suburban's Iowa plates, then at me. He was young, his face red from the cold, his eyes scanning the interior of the vehicle. "Where are you headed, sir?" "Heading up to Red Wing to check on my uncle's cabin," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He had a water pipe burst during the freeze." The trooper tapped his pen against the clipboard. "Can I see your license and registration?" I reached into my pocket, but instead of my driver's license, I pulled out my federal contractor credential, the one I had kept from my logistics work with the Department of Defense 5 years ago. It had a gold seal and a high-level clearance barcode. "I've got my federal transit pass," I said, handing it to him. "I was told the northern corridors were clear of the state blockades." The trooper took the card, his eyes widening slightly at the gold seal. He looked at the barcode, then at the Suburban. He didn't have a scanner that could read federal military logistics credentials on his belt. To him, I looked like a government agent on a quiet transport detail. "Is this official business, sir?" he asked, his tone shifting from suspicious to respectful. "The sooner I get to the cabin, the sooner we can secure the line," I said, giving him a firm, professional nod. He handed the card back. Watch out for the black ice on the Minnesota side, sir. It's bad near the bluffs. Appreciate the warning, officer. Stay warm. I drove across the bridge, the steel tires humming on the metal grate. As the Suburban's nose cleared the Minnesota state line, a massive weight lifted from my chest. We were out of Eleanor's immediate circle of local influence, but I knew the battle was only beginning. Charles Sterling wouldn't let a state border stop him. We reached Harlan's cabin near Duluth at midnight. The cabin was nestled in a dense pine forest on the edge of Lake Superior, surrounded by 5-foot drifts of snow. A single warm light was burning in the front window. The front door opened before I had even turned off the engine. Harlan stepped out onto the porch, wearing a heavy wool coat and holding a Winchester rifle in the crook of his arm. He didn't look at me. His eyes scanned the dark tree line behind my truck. "Inside, quick," he ordered. I carried Leo in his car seat, while Chloe ran ahead, her small boots sinking into the deep snow. Harlan shut the heavy oak door behind us, threw 3 heavy iron deadbolts into place, and pulled the thick curtains shut. The interior of the cabin was warm, smelling of pine wood and coffee. A massive stone fireplace crackled in the corner, casting a warm orange glow over the leather chairs and the walls lined with law books. Harlan set his rifle on the rack, walked over to Leo's car seat, and looked down at the sleeping baby. "He looks like your father, Marcus," Harlan said, his voice softer than I had ever heard it. "He's got the same jaw." "He's alive, Harlan," I said, sinking into one of the leather chairs. My body was screaming with exhaustion. I hadn't slept in 36 hours. "That's all that matters." Harlan walked over to the kitchen counter and poured 2 mugs of black coffee. He set one in front of me and handed Chloe a cup of warm apple cider. "I've spent the last 6 hours reviewing the Sterling Foundation bylaws," Harlan said, sitting across from me. He pulled a thick, yellowed legal pad toward him. "Your late father's trust was established in '98. It contains a very specific clause. The assets, the $55 million, cannot be touched by Eleanor or Charles unless there is no living male heir of the Vance bloodline." "I knew about the heir clause," I said, "but I didn't know they were willing to swap a child to trigger the default payout." "They weren't just swapping him," Harlan said, his eyes hard as flint. "If the baby died of sudden respiratory failure under your care, the custody agreement you signed last month automatically declared you legally unfit due to negligence or mental instability. The Sterling lawyers would have filed the paperwork within an hour. They would have seized Chloe, declared Eleanor the sole surviving parent, and liquidated the trust before the weekend. And the surrogate child in room 412? That child belonged to a young, undocumented woman from Indiana who died during labor at another Sterling-owned clinic 3 days ago," Harlan said. "They kept the body on ice and brought the infant to St. Jude's to stage the swap. It was a perfect corporate transaction. Clean, quiet, and legally airtight." My stomach turned. "They used a dead baby to steal my son's identity. And they would have gotten away with it if Chloe hadn't gone looking for you," Harlan said, looking at my daughter who was curled up on the small rug near the fire, her eyes heavy with sleep. "She's the only variable they didn't calculate. So how do we stop them?" I asked. Harlan leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. "We don't play their game. They want a quiet custody dispute in an Illinois court where they own the judges. We're going to make this a federal criminal conspiracy. I've already contacted the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois. He's an old colleague of mine. He's been looking for a way to crack the Sterling corporate empire for 5 years. Will he take the case?" "He will if we can provide physical evidence of the identity swap," Harlan said. "We need a certified DNA test from Leo, and we need Kensington's original badge log. But more than that, we need a confession." "Eleanor won't confess," I said. "She's too smart for that." "She's smart, but she's arrogant," Harlan said. "And arrogant people make mistakes when they think they've won. Tomorrow, we're going to give her exactly what she wants." "What's that?" "A face-to-face meeting," Harlan said. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving a silent, white wilderness outside the cabin windows. I sat at the wooden table, watching Leo drink his formula from a bottle Mac had packed. He was feeding well, his tiny fingers wrapping around my thumb with a surprising, warm strength. Harlan was on his satellite phone, his voice low and sharp as he coordinated with the federal marshals in Duluth. At noon, my satellite phone buzzed. It was a new number. I answered it. "Vance?" "Marcus." It was Charles Sterling's voice. It was heavier now, losing some of its smooth corporate polish. "You're in Minnesota. We know you crossed the border at Prescott." "You're tracking my truck," I said. We don't need to track your truck to know where you'd run, Marcus. You have no friends left. You have no money. You have nothing but your uncle's old cabin in the woods. Do you really think a retired federal prosecutor can protect you from me? I don't need protection, Charles. I have the truth. The truth is whatever I pay the newspapers to print on Monday morning, Charles said, his voice dropping into a low, menacing growl. Right now, you're a fugitive kidnapper. If you return the child to St. Jude's Hospital within the next 4 hours, I will instruct my lawyers to withdraw the criminal complaint. We will set up a private custody arrangement. You will receive $10 million and you will leave the country, alone. And Chloe? Chloe belongs to Eleanor, Charles said. She stays with us. I looked at my daughter, who was sitting on the floor, gently rocking Leo's bassinet. Her face was calm, but her eyes were wide with a quiet, ancient understanding. I want to hear Eleanor say it, I said. I'm here, Marcus. Eleanor's voice cut in on the line. She was on the speaker. The offer is fair. You can't live like a dog in the woods forever. 10 million is more than you would have made in 3 lifetimes as an analyst. Take the money and go to Europe. Start over. You really don't care about him at all, do you? I asked. He's your son, Eleanor. You carried him for 9 months. He's a sterling asset, Marcus, she said, her voice entirely devoid of emotion. And right now, you're costing us $500,000 a day in delayed liquidation fees. This ends today. I'll meet you, I said. Where? Charles asked. The old grain terminal near the Duluth harbor, I said. It's public. It's empty. We meet at 4 this afternoon. Bring the custody waiver and the 10 million. If I see a single security guard or local cop within 5 blocks of that terminal, I'm going to the federal building with Kensington's security logs. There was a brief pause on the line. We'll be there, Charles said. The line went dead. Harlan walked over and set his hand on my shoulder. The federal marshals will be positioned inside the old elevator tower. They have recording equipment. But Marcus, if Charles's people spot them, they will open fire. They aren't going to let you walk out of that terminal with those documents. I know, I said. That's why I'm not bringing the documents. What are you bringing? A recorder, I said. At 3 in the afternoon, we drove down from the bluffs into the Duluth harbor. The harbor was a desolate landscape of rusted steel, frozen water, and towering concrete grain elevators that had been abandoned since the 1970s. The wind off Lake Superior was brutal, carrying the scent of ice and iron ore. The old terminal sat at the end of a long, gravel spit that jutted into the frozen bay. I parked the Suburban near the base of the massive concrete silos. The snow was unplowed here, the wind whipping the white powder across the gravel in long, ghostly sheets. I kept Chloe and Leo in the cab, their heater running. Harlan was positioned in the second row, his rifle rested on the window frame, his eyes locked onto the approach road. At exactly 4 o'clock, a single black Mercedes SUV pulled onto the gravel spit. It stopped 20 yards from my truck. The doors opened. Charles Sterling stepped out, wearing a long black cashmere coat and leather gloves. Eleanor stepped out from the passenger side, her face wrapped in a silk scarf to protect her from the wind. 2 large men in heavy dark coats stepped out from the front seats, Charles's personal security. I stepped out of the Suburban, leaving the door slightly ajar. I wore my heavy canvas jacket, my hands tucked into the pockets. Where is the child, Marcus? Charles asked, his voice carried away by the wind. He's safe, I said, stepping toward them. My boots crunched on the frozen gravel. Do you have the custody waiver? Charles reached inside his coat and pulled out a leather folder. Signed by Eleanor. The 10 million has been transferred to an escrow account in Zurich. The moment we verify the child's identity, the funds will be unlocked. And the real infant? Eleanor asked, her eyes cold as the ice on the bay. The one you stole from room 412? He's in the truck, Eleanor, I said, stepping closer. But we're not doing the transfer here. Not until you admit why you did it. Eleanor let out a sharp, cold laugh. Why? You know why, Marcus. My father's foundation was built on $60 million of sterling assets. If that trust default clicked on Monday morning without an heir, the entire board would have been liquidated by federal auditors. We needed a male heir. We needed him to be registered under our bloodline. But the child I delivered was stillborn at 10:42. My heart stopped. Stillborn? I whispered. The umbilical cord was wrapped twice, Eleanor said, her voice entirely flat, devoid of any grief. It was a medical variable. But we couldn't let a medical variable destroy 30 years of corporate planning. So we had Dr. Kensington swap the body with the surrogate's child from room 412. It was a simple, logical adjustment. And the dead baby? We brought it from the county clinic, Charles said, stepping forward, his patience wearing thin. It was a clean swap, Marcus. If you hadn't hidden under that bed like a rat, you would have been $10 million richer, and we would have had our clean liquidation. Now give us the boy. No, I said. Charles's face darkened. He gestured to the 2 security guards behind him. Take him and find the child. The 2 men stepped forward, their hands moving inside their heavy coats. Harlan, I shouted. A sharp, deafening crack echoed across the gravel spit. A bullet struck the hood of the Mercedes, sending a shower of sparks and metal fragments into the air. The 2 security guards immediately froze, their hands dropping back to their sides. From the second-row window of the Suburban, the barrel of Harlan's Winchester rifle was pointing directly at Charles's chest. The next one goes through the radiator, Charles. Harlan's voice boomed through the wind. And the third one goes through you. Stand down. You're old, Vance, Charles sneered, though he didn't move. You think you can fight my legal team from a federal penitentiary? You just shot at a civilian vehicle. I didn't shoot at a civilian vehicle, Charles, Harlan said, stepping out of the Suburban, his rifle held steady at his shoulder. I fired a warning shot to prevent an active kidnapping of a federal witness. And if you check your 6 o'clock, you'll see we brought some friends. From behind the concrete silos, 3 dark blue SUVs with federal plates pulled onto the spit, their red and blue lights flashing against the gray concrete. 8 federal marshals stepped out, their tactical rifles drawn, their voices commanding everyone to drop their weapons. The 2 security guards slowly raised their hands, stepping away from the Mercedes. Charles Sterling didn't move. His face was a mask of cold fury as the marshals surrounded him. You have no jurisdiction here. This is a local custody dispute. It was a local custody dispute until you used interstate wire fraud to coordinate a newborn swap across 3 state lines, Charles. A tall federal marshal said, stepping forward with a pair of steel handcuffs. And your daughter just confessed to the conspiracy on a federal recording channel. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my small digital recorder, its red light still glowing steadily. Eleanor looked at the recorder, then at me. For the first time since I had met her 10 years ago, I saw real fear in her eyes. The cold, corporate mask had finally cracked, leaving only a small, desperate woman who had gambled her family's empire and lost. Marcus, she whispered, her voice trembling. We can fix this. We can talk about this. The talk is over, Eleanor, I said. I turned my back on them and walked back to the Suburban. The arrest of Charles and Eleanor Sterling was the lead story on every national news network for 3 weeks. The federal prosecutors dismantled their corporate empire piece by piece. The investigation revealed that Charles had been using his private clinics and hospital boards to falsify medical records, shield his assets from federal taxes, and secure millions in fraudulent insurance claims. Dr. Joseph Kensington pleaded guilty to conspiracy, corporate fraud, and medical malpractice. He received a 12-year sentence in a federal penitentiary. Eleanor accepted a plea agreement, admitting her role in the identity swap and the trust fund conspiracy. She was sentenced to 8 years. Her father, Charles, was convicted on 36 counts of racketeering, wire fraud, and conspiracy. At 74, his 30-year sentence ensured he would spend the rest of his life behind a steel door. The Sterling Foundation assets were liquidated by a court-appointed trustee. A substantial portion of the $45 million trust was redirected to fund pediatric security systems and medical care for low-income mothers across Illinois and Minnesota. But I didn't care about the money. I kept the Suburban. I bought a small, 3-bedroom house on 20 acres of pine forest near Duluth, just 5 miles down the road from Harlan's cabin. It wasn't a mansion. It had a wood stove, a wide porch, and a yard where Chloe could run with her new golden retriever, Rusty. It was a home. One evening, a year after the arrest, I sat on the porch steps watching the first snow of the winter fall over the pines. Chloe was sitting on the rug inside the living room, reading a picture book to Leo, who was crawling across the hardwood floor with a determined, clumsy energy. He was healthy, strong, and completely oblivious to the storm we had survived to keep him safe. Harlan walked up the steps, carrying a bundle of split pine wood for the stove. He set the wood down, wiped his brow, and sat beside me on the steps. "The federal court finalized the custody order this morning, Marcus," he said, pulling a flask from his coat and taking a small sip. "It's over. No appeals, no challenges. They're yours. Forever." I looked through the window at my children. "I know," I said. "You did good, kid," Harlan said, his voice rough but warm. "Your father would have been proud of the way you handled yourself. You didn't just run, you fought." "I didn't have a choice," I said. "They were my kids." "Sometimes that's the only reason a man needs to change the world," Harlan said, standing up and grabbing his wood bundle. "Now get inside before your coffee freezes." I stood on the porch for another minute, letting the cold, clean Minnesota wind hit my face. For 10 years, I had been a risk analyst, a man who calculated the probability of failure. But as I watched my daughter laugh and my son take his first shaky steps toward her, I realized that some things can't be calculated. Love isn't a variable. It's the only constant that matters. And as I walked through the door and closed it behind me, shutting out the cold, I knew we had finally won. We were safe. We were together. We were home. Thank you for staying with me through this long, difficult journey. If this story showed you that a father's resolve can shatter even the most powerful corporate empires, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand up for your family against impossible odds? Your courage might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you believe in justice, strength, and the unbreakable bond of family, consider subscribing to join us for our next story. Take care of yourself and protect the ones who truly matter.